نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Inshallah, I know we stopped from Kitab al-Salah last time, but we'll come back to that after we've done these 3 sessions of the chapter of fasting, inshallah. The page number should be on your books is 127, 129. As you know, there's a few weeks left for the month of Ramadan, and it's important that we memorize and go over the rulings of the Fiqh of Ramadan, as it entails a fard of our actions. It's a compulsory pillar of Islam, so I know it comes around once a year, so we tend to forget the rulings associated with the fasting. So it's a personal obligation upon everyone, so everyone needs to know the rulings, and they should be memorized, because obviously when you're going throughout your day in Ramadan and you experience a certain scenario where you could have broke your fast or not, obviously at that moment you don't need the knowledge that will this break my fast or want to break my fast. A lot of people what they do something, and then the next day they're like, oh, I did this yesterday, is my fast okay? It's too late now. You're supposed to have the knowledge before doing that action. So that's why it's important to memorize the stuff beforehand, inshallah. Inshallah, just share the ayat in the Quran al-Kareem, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses Ramadan. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون أياما معدودات فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين فمن تطوع خيرا فهو خير له وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. This is in Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is talking about the month of Ramadan becoming a fard upon us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, O you who believe, kutiba. Kutiba means it has been written for you, but in the context of the Quran, it means, over here it means that it's made fard upon you. So kutiba alaykum as-siyam, fasting has been made fard upon you. Kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum, the way it was made compulsory upon the people before you. And then Allah gives a reason for this. And Allah mentions لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. The purpose of fasting is so that we become conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this should be our motive and our objective in Ramadan, that we become more aware of Allah. And generally, taqwa is said to be the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or loosely translated. But if you really want to understand what taqwa is, it's to become more aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when you're doing something wrong and you're aware of Allah, then you won't do the action. And if you're about to miss something which is compulsory, then if you're aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you won't miss. For example, it's late night and you feel tired and you know you need to read Isha Salah. However, what happens, Shaitan comes and gives you waswasa. No one knows, man. Just go to sleep. Don't worry, we'll start fresh from Fajr, inshallah. Or, we'll start fresh from Zohar, because I can't get up for Fajr anyway. Yeah, so normally that means the state of people. But taqwa would be, no, I'm going to get up, even though I'm comfortable. Sometimes you might make it all the way to your bed, and then it's still playing on your mind. Whatever action it is, right, something necessary that you need to do, then you get. Taqwa would be that you're aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence, and then you go and do that action. Same way, when you do a good action, then or a ni'mah comes your way, a blessing comes your way, you're grateful and you do shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So taqwa would be like, broadly speaking, like that. So the purpose and the aim and objective of Ramadan is to build that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And obviously one narration mentions that you can experience how the poor would feel and so on. But I remember I was teaching one of the younger kids, and one of the young children asked, when I was telling them, for children normally we say you want to feel like the poor people do. And the child said to me, and what do the poor people want to feel like? Right? So it must be more deeper than, and it's an innocent question, but it's something, and this was like years ago, right? And it really kind of made me think about it in a more deeper and from a deeper point of view. Because normally we say, we just want to feel like the poor people, and then that's on our mind that, how do the poor people feel? And then when we get hungry, we're like, imagine how poor people feel, man. But it's more deeper than that, because they have to also fast as well, right? So what's the purpose is to build this connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obviously gives leeway to a certain group of people. Inshallah, we'll discuss the fiqh ruling, but I'll do the translation of the ayat that I've recited. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخْرَى. And the person from amongst you, someone who is unwell or is traveling, then he completes or he fasts on other days. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. And those who don't have the ability to fast, imagine through old age, extremely old, they can't fast, then what do? Then those people, Allah has given them a way out. They give fidyah. And normally people try to give fidyah, try to get away with fasting. It doesn't work like that. I had a brother come to me and he's like, I have a difficult job, and so I don't want to fast. Basically, my job is more practical, like a practical job, and I can't fast. So and this is like 2 Ramadans in, he's already been missing them, right? And then I don't want to fast. Is there a leeway for me? There is no leeway, right? For those people who just want, because they're fasting and they have to go to work, you still have to work. You still have to fast as well. But what the Sharia advises those people who are employers, so if you got people working for you, then you be lenient on them. Yes, that's the advice that the Sharia gives to employers, that in the month of Ramadan, imagine you like people, I know takeaways do it because they got no choice, right? When the guys are doing 12-hour shifts, and in Ramadan they only do like a 6-hour shift. Why? Because there's no one eating anyway all day, right? But generally, other employees should do that as well. So if you have a garage, for example, people are working for you 10 hours. So it's Ramadan, we'll only open for 6 hours, we'll only open for 5 hours. If you do it for the purpose of the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you won't miss out on that risk. Because whatever is written for you will come, and you'll get it within those hours as well, right? So this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So but that doesn't mean that you cut the hours and you cut the pay as well. No, you be to the mercy of Ramadan, you let the pay be as well. That should be obviously the objective behind it. Obviously, you don't want to cut the pay. The guys like, I'd rather do full day. I know someone that was in that circumstance, that the manager said you can do half day in Ramadan, and he's like, no, I want to do full day. You're gonna cut my wage, so I need to pay my bills, so I'm gonna come full day. Yeah, so you don't put a person in that situation as well. So you be lenient on them in that aspect as well. But so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to a group of people who can't fast at all, that they give fidyah, فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. But the one who can give more, like normally you say fidyah is £5 a day, the same as Fitr Ramadan, right? So it's £5 per roza you have to pay. But if you're loaded, £150 is nothing for the month. £150 is nothing if you got thousands of pounds and you blow down a normal family meal going out somewhere. And people do that, they go to, I don't know, Nawabs or somewhere, and then they blow like few £100 with their family on a normal weekend. So for that person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is obviously saying, فَمَنْ تَطَوَّى خَيْرٌ فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. The one who wants to voluntarily give extra. So imagine you find it's £5 a day, you think that's mine, £150, you know what, I'll just pay £15, £20 a day, £10 a day, even £6 a day, something more than the minimum requirement. Allah said that will be good for you. وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. However, if you were to fast, then that'll be better for you. Right? So, you know, sometimes you're traveling and you miss the roza. Even though we have the excuse to miss the roza, but if you can still fast, and you know, the traveling back in the day is not the same as traveling now. Then the reason that it depends on what country you are, in terms of, you know, at the same time they would physically travel by foot. But now we just jump in a car and we go on, before we know it, we're 60, 70 miles down the road within 1 hour. Right? So you will be considered as traveler, you can miss the roza in that circumstance, but if you can keep the fast, then it's better that you keep the fast. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you knew, then you'd keep the fast. So this is just the ayah which I wanted to share with you, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the fasting farḍ upon us. Moving on to, inshallah, page 127, talking about the Fiqh of Ramadan, talking about the legal rulings of Ramadan and the rules that and we need to apply. So, first thing he mentions here, the fasting is to do, generally fasting we translate, or the definition of keeping a roza would be to stay away from eating, drinking and marital relationships. These three things are compulsory to stay away from whilst fasting. Any one of them you do, your fast will break. Right? What's the timing that ulama mentioned, or the Sharia prescribes? It's from Subh Sadiq, true dawn. If you remember from when we discussed or spoke about the start times of prayers, and we've done that table, I mentioned that at the time of Fajr, there's two lights. First, the light spreads going vertically, and then afterwards it goes horizontally. The light after night, right? So in the morning, the light. The first one is known as the false dawn, Subh Kazim. That's not when the roza starts. Then you have after that Subh Sadiq, when the horizon starts to get light. When the horizon starts to get light, that means that Sahri time is over. Suhoor time is over, the Fajr time has started, hence the roza has started. Right? So that's the technical definition of. So in that time, if someone is eating, even if something is ready in their mouth, imagine the time for suhoor ends at 5:15. Soon as it strikes 5:15 on the clock that you have, and even if there's something in your mouth, you have to take that out. If you swallow, you thinking that it's ready in my mouth and you swallow it, your fast is broken. Right? So you intentionally ate after keeping the roza, so the fast will be broken. One is that, when it...
What if it's stuck in your teeth?
Yeah, inshallah we'll discuss that next lesson. I'm just giving you like an intro for now. Yeah, but that if you're stuck in your teeth, then there's a bit more detail to that. I'll come around to that, inshallah. If I forget to mention it, you can mention it again in the next lesson. That's going to come in the next lesson, inshallah. So he mentions here that so fasting is to stay away from eating, drinking and marital relationships. These three things from the start of Fajr, which is true dawn, until Maghrib, until sunset. A lot of people, or these modern translations you get this right, sunrise to sunset. That is wrong. Because sunrise is the end of Fajr. The roza starts at the start of Fajr. Right? So it will be from true dawn, I start of Fajr, until Maghrib, which is sunset. So keep that in mind. And at the same time, another thing is you need the intention of the fast as well. Right? So you need to have a niyyah for keeping the roza. It says there are 7 types of fast. Fard fast, wajib, sunnah, nafal, mustahab, makruh tahrimi and makruh tanzih. there are 7 categories where fasting falls into. So we'll mention, inshallah, the 7 categories in more detail. So the first category I mentioned, the fard fast. This is the straightforward one. Fasting in the month of Ramadan is the fard category. So any fast that we keep other than that generally won't be fard. Even though that they mentioned, and this is also the fasting of Ramadan, Ada or Qada. Ada means you're fasting in Ramadan. Qada means like Qaza in Urdu, right? We say Qaza. The way you do Qaza namaz, you're very late. Same way they do Qaza fast as well. When you miss the fast, imagine you were really ill, you were unconscious, and you had to miss the fast for health reasons. Then you make the fasting later, it's called Qaza. Yeah, Qada fast. So if you're doing Ada or Qada, both of them are fard. In both situations, the roza will be fard. And then it mentions kafara and also manzoor fast. One is kafara would be an expiation fast. A fast that you do for making a mistake or an error in either a fast of Ramadan or a qasam you have broke. When you break a promise, you have to keep a fast as well. That's one type of kafara you do. And the other one would be a nazar fast. You know, a lot of people in our culture, nazar one is very common. They say, for example, if my son passes, I'm going to give bakra and qurbani. You know, people do those kind of things, right? Some people say, if my child passes the exam, I'm going to keep a fast. Or if X, Y, and Z happens, I'm going to fast. That is called a nazar fast. If you make a nazar like that, basically you vow something, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, because then that thing becomes compulsory on you. Yeah? Be that linked to fasting, or be, for example, someone says, if my son passes the exam, I'm going to read 100 nafal. The moment he passes, you're reading 100 nafal, there's no getting away with it. You're going to do those nafal. If you say, I'm going to give this qurbani, if I don't know, like, you know, sometimes someone has an accident and someone's in hospital, and I know the elderly do it, they give sadaqah, they say, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice an animal when my child gets better, and then the child gets better, and then they try to dodge the sacrifice, right? Or some obviously go ahead with it. That becomes compulsory, you need to carry that out.
What if you forget you made a promise?
Then you shouldn't make promises. Generally, the promise, right? It's the way Pakistanis do it, or the youngsters do it these days. First, it used to be Allah Qasme, and now because people want to be more Arab, they're like, Wallahi bro, Wallahi bro. It means the same thing. Yeah? Allah Qasme and Wallahi, I swear to God, or yeah, I swear to Allah. All those will be considered Qasm. And you only do that in serious situations. Yeah? When you do on every single thing, you know, whatever happens, yeah, I went to the park, Qasmi, I went to the park. I did this, Qasmi, I did this. You know, people do that, right? Wallahi, na, Wallahi. It shouldn't be used so lightly. The only, places that where you use a Qasm is, for example, in court. There's a court case going on, you're a witness or something, and they say, okay, you know, swear the oath that it wasn't you, and so on, or whatever the scenario is, right? That's those kind of scenarios where you use Qasm. Otherwise, you become like the boy who cried wolf, right? So you say, you know, the wolf's here, the wolf's here. Each time the people will go, what happened? Nothing, he's joking. And when the wolf comes, eats the sheep, and then it's like, no one came to help me, right? That's what happens when you keep all the time say Qasme, Qasme, Qasme Allah, Qasme Wallahi, like that. Then when you tell him the truth, the person thinks, oh, he just got a bad habit of saying Qasme, I don't believe him still. So your word loses the value. So you only use that in the serious scenarios. So the fard of Ramadan. So generally speaking, the main category of fard will be the fasting of Ramadan. Doing it on time or doing it late. Second category of fasting would be wajib. That'll be the qasam one, because the qasam one is disputed, either it's fard or wajib. And the same one, the kafara one. So the nazar one and the kafara one, they can fall into wajib as well. And making up a nafil fast. Any nafil fast that is broken, it becomes wajib on you. So imagine, you know, people say it's sunnah to fast on Monday and Thursday. Monday he wakes up, he keeps the fast halfway down to the day. He's like, you know what, it's a bit of a mission. It's not Ramadan, I'm going to break it. So he breaks it. Even though it was nafil first, it was optional. Now that he broke the fast after keeping it, even if he kept it for 5 minutes, if his intention, everything was there, time starting, and he's like, you know what, I actually know I don't want to keep the fast. Now he broke it. So now it's wajib on him, it's compulsory for him, that he has to make that fast up on a different date. So he can't get away with that fast. He's made it compulsory upon himself by keeping it and then breaking it. Number 3, Sunnah fast. He says the fasting on the blessed day of Ashura is the 10th of Muharram. You know, 10th of Muharram has loads of fada'il, virtues for the day of 10th of Muharram. Normally people talk about Muharram, the martyrdom of Imam Hussein radiyallahu anhu. But there are also many other virtues of 10th of Muharram. Like the Musa alayhi salam being free from Fir'aun, and so on. There's a long list. So here, the reason why I mentioned Musa alayhi salam was, there's a hadith that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam fasted the month 10th of Muharram. And when he inquired why do the people fast, the Jews used to fast because of Musa alayhi salam. Right? And the Jews used to fast, and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, we're more rightful to fast. But we don't want to be same as them. So we will add the 9th of Muharram as well. That's why if you keep a roza on the 10th of Muharram, even though that is the sunnah date to keep your fast, you need to do the 9th and the 10th, or the 10th and the 11th, to be different from the Jews. And so that falls into the Ashura. Normally they call it Ashura, or the 10th of Muharram fast. So either you're going to do a 9th and the 10th, or the 10th and the 11th. And the story is obviously about Musa alayhi salam and the Jews fasting. So to be different from the Jews, they only keep it on the 10th, so just doing it on the 10th would be incorrect. Even though if you just did it on the 10th, the fast will be done, but the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ won't be fulfilled as is prescribed. Next, number 4, mandub, recommended fast. These will be all other sunnah fasts that we hear about. Fasting the 3 middle days of every month, which will be the 13th, 14th and 15th of every Islamic month. There's a reason, a wisdom behind these fasts as well. You know, it's not just the Prophet ﷺ, every single action that he ﷺ did, there was a blessing and a hidden secret behind. If we know it or we don't know it, there is a blessing and a secret behind these actions. You know, I heard from one of my teachers about that on the 10th, the 13th, 11th, 14th and 15th, these are the middle days of the month when the moon is full. And as we know that, you know, the sea, the waves and all that, how are they affected? They're affected by the moon, aren't they? So when there's a full moon, it also affects the nafs as well. It affects our character as well. So on those days, generally people are more hyper. Crime rate generally increases on those days. So what happens, you keep a fast on that day, on those 3 days, and you keep yourself in control in your limits. So this is one of the spiritual benefits of fasting on the 13th, 14th and 15th of every Islamic month, because the moon does have its effect on our behavior as well in that aspect. So the ulama have mentioned that's one of the wisdoms or one of the reasons behind. But generally, why would we want to do it? Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he fasted in the middle days of every month. So that's one type of mandub or recommended fast. The other one is every Monday and Thursday the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would fast. And the third they mentioned is the 6 days of Shawwal. That is after Eid. The next month is after Ramadan is Shawwal. So if you fast the 6 days in the month of Shawwal, is as if you fasted the full year. Because what happens, your fasting is multiplied 10 times. So 30 days of Ramadan, 6 days of Shawwal, 36 times 10 is 360, and that's the amount of days there are in a year. So when you fast the 30 days of Ramadan and the 6 days afterwards, the 6 days can be any of days of the month. It doesn't have to be the first, second, third like that. First obviously is going to be Eid, but It doesn't have to be in order. It could be like the 7th, 9th, 11th, 17th. As long as you've done 6 days in a month is sufficient. Okay, so keep that in mind. They are sunnah fasts to do. Even though they mention here under mandub, but these are sunnah fasts. So 3 middle days of every month, Mondays and Thursdays. Even if you look at, modern health or dietitians or whatever they want to call themselves, right? Health gurus on social media. But scientifically speaking, that the body, the most, like what they say, obviously you fast 2 days every week, and they do water fasts. Obviously according to them is water fast, according to us is Monday and Thursday, the sunnah fast of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you do them, then your body stays in check in terms of health. So there are a lot of health benefits as well, fasting. So, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's 2 ways to see it. One is the Islamic aspect, that it's ibadat, it's sunnah, we're gonna do it. Second thing that we should always have in our mind is it will benefit me as a human being. It will benefit my health. Depends what sunnah it is. It will benefit us socially. It will benefit us morally. It will be good for our family. Whatever the sunnah is, there will always be a benefit of in the aspect of being a human being and living on this earth. And so there will be that kind of benefit as well with the sunnahs of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Number 5 is the nafil fast. So any other day apart from the above will be considered nafil fasting, and then you can fast all the time. Then he mentions here number 6, makruh tahrimi, i.e. you're sinful for fasting on these days. Fasting on the 2 Eids, and then fasting on the days of Tashriq this will be the 3 days after Big Eid. Like normally they say, Big Eid is for 3 days long. So the 9th is Yawm al-Arafah, when the people stand for Hajj. The 10th is of Dhul Hijjah is Yawm al-Eid. Then 11, 12 and 13. These 3 days are known as the days of Tashriq. So fasting on any of these, you could say Eid day and the 3 days after Eid al-Adha, the Big Eid. Then these 4 days, it's makruh for anyone to fast on those days. Number 7 would be makruh tanzihi. Normally, sometimes people translate makruh tahrimi and makruh tanzihi, major makruh and minor makruh. People take minor makruh to be minor, let's just say is minor. You could say the better or more fitting translation, like you could say it would be the higher makruh and the lower makruh. So it won't be that it's minor, because normally in our common usage, minor means it's alright, if you do it, it's okay. And just as a side note, generally when any fiqh book mentions something is makruh on its own, it's talking about the higher one. So like, for example, ulama mentioned smoking is makruh. That will always be the higher one. It won't be the younger one, your lower one. It won't be that makruh tanzihi, it's minor. The way the lab say, it's only makruh, man, just check over, don't worry about it. Right? Let's smoke, it's okay. No. Generally, like shisha, all these things, vapes, and all these things will go into makruh tahrimi, then fall into. So you need to know the difference between makruh tahrimi and makruh tanzihi. So for the lower or lesser makruh, it mentions to single out fasting on a Saturday or Friday. So just fasting on Saturday on its own is makruh. Just fasting on Saturday. So if you're going to fast on Saturday, then you need to fast Sunday, or you need to fast Friday with that. Same with fasting on Friday on its own is makruh as well. So if you're going to fast on Friday, then you fast Thursday and Friday, or Friday and Saturday. So you shouldn't do Friday on its own or Saturday on its own. Unless obviously a person has a habit of fasting like this, like 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day on, 1 day off. So when he's doing 1 day on, 1 day off, obviously it's going to fall on a Saturday, in which he has done Friday, and he's not going to do Sunday, because he's doing that and it's going as a sequence. then it won't be makruh for that person. But if you just randomly get the josh in the morning, let's keep a roza today, and which normally happens to people, and then they say, let's keep a fast today, and it happens to be Saturday, then they should be prepared for Sunday mujahada as well. Yeah, it's a 2-day sacrifice after nafs. So it's not going to only be for one day. There's 2 types of fasting that they mentioned here also in the minor makruh as well. Sawmul Wisal and Sawmul Dahr. Sawmul Wisal is the way the Prophet ﷺ would sometimes fast, is to fast consecutively a few days without eating at all. No suhoor, no iftar. Continuously fasting for a number of days. So, someone might say that I can fast 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a row without breaking my roza, then that'll be makruh for that person. The sunnah is to do iftar and suhoor. When the Sahaba Ikram saw the Prophet ﷺ fasting like this, Sawmul Wisal, consecutively a few days in a row, they tried to copy the Prophet ﷺ and they became weak. And when the Prophet ﷺ said to them, why you guys, you look weak, and what's up? And they said, we see you fasting, Ya Rasulullah. We see you fasting without having said in iftari for consecutive days. And the Prophet ﷺ said, who amongst you is like me? Yeah, so who amongst you is like me? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me food and drink. Right? So there's certain ibadat or certain worship which is only for the Prophet ﷺ and not for the ummah. And this was one of those actions. So Sawmul Wisal won't be allowed to fast a number of days without eating or drinking. The next one is to fast the entire year. And so to fast the whole entire year will be also considered, this is called Sawmul Dahr, i.e. fasting all year round. This will also be considered a makruh as well. Obviously loads of benefits why the ulama categorize it as such, and sometimes a person, for example, he's been fasting for so long, might get to Ramadan and he's like, I can't be bothered to fast. And then he might abandon the fast of Ramadan, but because he's overdone it. Sometimes some people overdo it and they become unwell, and then when the further time comes to fast, they haven't got in them to fast then. So it's important to keep that in mind. The next, page 129. So these were the 7 categories of fasting. So obviously the month of Ramadan is the fard one, number 1. So we need to keep that in mind and pay attention to the rulings pertaining to that. Is it the intention of fasting? So intention is done of, they make 2 categories here. The first one, all types of fast require intention. The following types of fast require the intention and specification of the type of fast, as well as that the intention be made previous night before Fajr, yet after Maghrib. So they put 2 categories here. One, the niyyah needs to be done the night before, i.e. the day starts after Maghrib. So from Maghrib until when the fast starts in the morning, Subah. Right? The intention needs to be done then of the fast you are keeping. Which fast am I keeping? The second category at the bottom is even if you never made the intention in the night, you woke up, you overslept, you woke up, it's Fajr time, I missed my Sahri. Can you make the intention now? Yes, you can. So the first category is when the intention has to be made in the night, and you have to allocate the intention to the certain type of roza you are keeping. So qada, fast of Ramadan. In the month of Ramadan, a person missed 5 fasts. Now he has 11 months to do those fasts before the next Ramadan obviously comes back round. So when he wakes up on a random day after 1 month, he's like, I've got 5 fasts to do, let's start this. Now he wakes up in the morning, he doesn't make the intention in the night, and then he's like, shall I keep a fast? I haven't ate anything yet. Now he can't make the intention of the Ramadan qaza. It's too late. But he can make the intention of a nafil roza as long as it hasn't reached midday. So you know if you woke up and before zawal like finishes starts about 12, you should say, right? So if you woke up at 11 o'clock on any normal day and you thought, you know what, I haven't ate so far, I'd rather just fast, I got like 5 hours left, then you can change that day into a roza. Right? So that's why the ulama mentioned that one way to keep a fast is that if you woke up and you haven't had food and you think that, you know, I'm not going to eat for another 2-3 hours anyway, I need 2 more hours, I'll complete my roza. So you can change your intention and keep a fast on that day as well. Right? So the first one is the qada fast of Ramadan. Any roza you missed in Ramadan, to make the fast up, you need the intention in the night, and at the same time, you need to specify, this is the fast I'm going to keep tomorrow, is for the Ramadan fast that I missed. So that needs to be done. Second, he mentioned any nafil fast that you broke. So last week I kept a fast, nafil one, I broke it. So this is the intention should be, I am making up that fast, and that intention needs to be done in the night. Right? It needs to be done in the night during Isha time. The third is the kafara fast. So the one you're doing as a punishment for not fulfilling one of the commands. And the third is unspecified vows. Nazar mutlaq. Like for example, a person, you know, I told you about a person makes a vow that if my son passes the exam, I'm gonna keep a fast. But he hasn't said any day. He hasn't said Monday I'm gonna keep it, or Tuesday I'm gonna keep it, or 3 days I'm gonna on the row, I'm gonna keep it, or 3 consecutive 5. He hasn't fixed any days or any time. He just said, I'm gonna keep a roza. Now when he's keeping the fast, he has to say, this is the fast that I promised to keep. Because there's no fixed day now, he has to fix the day before he keeps it. Right? So the intention needs to be done in the night before. Is
Now if he does that, or can he just keep the fast of Ramadan and when we find
Alright, keep both of them together in one go.
I just do normal fast in Ramadan?
And then say that, oh, that's the promise one I broke. No, you can't. They have to be 2 separate ones. Yeah, so you can't do 2 birds with 1 stone, like saying Ramadan's coming, so I broke 10 rosé already. I've done this, I've done that. Chalo, I'll do both rosé together. It doesn't work like that. You have to keep them separately. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so each fast has to be done separately.
So if the sun fails the exam?
If the sun fails the exam, then no rosa.
It's going to be enough.
Yeah, so obviously it'll be as long as that. So when you make a vow that I'm going to do X, Y, Z, if something happens, it only becomes compulsory on you if that thing happens. If that thing doesn't happen, then obviously you don't have to keep that fast. But most likely the reason why people do that is the intent to give sadaqah. And when you give charity or a sacrifice in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that increases the blessing and barakah in your life. That increases the barakah in your rizq. So when people say that, you know, I'm going to give sadaqah, because sadaqah it removes calamities and musibah from people. So that's one of the wisdoms behind it. You know, the modern time we live in, I know like my grandma, she does it and everything, literally, right? So that's how the tradition people will like, because they've always wanted the blessings from something, and hence they would say if something happens, even in something you might consider minor, like, you know, I consider something minor when my grandma like said, someone good Pakistan, she like, you know, I'm gonna give £20 sadaqah if they can reach Pakistan safely. Like, because it's the attitude and it shows the intention of the person. They always want good for someone else, right? So I know some people do it like that as well. So soon as the person arrives there, then you gotta pay that £20, but it's a form of blessing, and that could be the reason why the person got there safely, or they never face any challenges or difficulties because of the sadaqah you intend to give for their safety and protection.
What if you give it before they leave? Will it still work the same way?
What do you mean?
Like instead of giving sadaqah after, you give it before. because you don't know what happens in the future.
Oh, so like for example, like someone says, when they get to Pakistan, I'll give whatever charity, right? And then he's like, you know what, they're gonna go next week, or I'll just give the £10 now. Yeah. He can give beforehand, but it's not compulsory on him to give it. The compulsion will only kick in is like giving zakat, like for example in advance. You know, like you can pay next year's zakat this year, but it'll be minus when you calculate it next year because you overpaid. Yeah, so you're in credit. That's how your zakat works as well. So if your zakat was £150, you pay £200 in advance, and then when you calculated it 2 months later, it was only £150. £150 zakat is done. The extra £50 is credit for next year. So next year when it breaks that to £200, you got £50 credit. So then you only pay £150. You pay minus that. So you can pay advance, yeah, but you can't delay. If you delay, then that's when the sin kicks in. But you can give it beforehand. And obviously, there's a blessing in giving it beforehand as well, it's fine. As long as you do it. So the second category they mentioned here is, and we'll stop on this one inshallah. The second category they mentioned is that those ones that don't require, you see the following types of fast require neither specification of the fast nor the intention being made in the previous night before Fajr. So these next ones, you don't need to make the intention in the night. Obviously you should, it's better to do so. But imagine you didn't make the intention in the night and you don't have to say which roza it is. Right? As long as obviously you make, it says here, rather the intention may be made any time from the previous night until before the Dahwat al-Kubra, i.e. Zawal time. And so the intention, niyat needs to be done, you got until Zawal time. So it says Ramadan fast during the month of Ramadan. So obviously in the month of Ramadan, if no one's going to say to you, what roza are you keeping? You're not going to say, the qasam bro. Obviously you keep your Ramadan fast. So everyone knows, you know, naturally it's going to be the month of Ramadan fast. So you don't need to say that I am fasting for Ramadan. Even though that we have that dua, wa bisawmi ghadin nawaitu min shahri Ramadan, that I intend to fast the fast of Ramadan tomorrow, right? But you don't need to specify like that. If you just say I'm keeping your roza in your mind and heart, intention is in your mind and heart, you don't need to verbally say it as well. Right? So as long as you know that, look, as soon as you woke up in the morning and your mind's telling you, look, I'm not eating because I've got a roza. Right? You're about to go for a munch downstairs and you think, man, I got a roza. That is sufficient for you to just think it like that. That is your intention there because you've already told yourself, I am fasting. So you've made your intention within the time. You don't need to say, okay, wake up and like, oh, I never had sehri. Okay, I'm fasting today. You don't need to tell yourself that. As long as you know that I'm not eating because I've got roza, your intention is done. But this needs to be done before Zawal. So some, especially British lads, they wake up really late and you overslept and you woke up and it's Zohar time. You missed that roza. Because now it's too late to make the intention. The intention needs to be made before the makruh time. And especially if someone's got a night shift and they never made the intention, they were too tired, came home, went to sleep, they woke up at Zohar time, that's it, you missed your fast. Even though you still need to stay hungry all day, but the fast doesn't count, right? So you need to do the fast again. So the month of Ramadan doesn't require that you make the intention in the night, you can do it when you wake up in the morning. Or when you specify the fast, you say, my son, if you pass the exam on the 1st of January, 2nd of January, I'm keeping a roza. When super 2nd of January comes, you don't need to say, oh, this is the fast I'm keeping. Because you already made that in your original promise that you vow that you done. And any nafil fast, you wake up in the morning, as long as Zawal time hasn't kicked in. Right? So Zawal currently is, it ends at 12:15. So just say, according to one opinion, it starts at like about 1 hour before, so 11:15. So you woke up and it's 11 o'clock and you can just make your intention then, I'd rather keep a fast today. I'm not going anywhere, I'm not doing anything, I'm going to be sitting at home. So you can change that day into ibadat, right? So you can do that as well. So you don't need to have the intention from the night or fixed. That's for any nafil roza, inshallah. So inshallah, we'll stop there if you have any questions. But try to memorize this because obviously this is compulsory for you to know. Inshallah, try to memorize these ahkam. And next week, inshallah, we'll start from the hilal, the moon sighting. And I won't go into the moon news.
It's swallowing your spit with your.
Swallowing your spit doesn't break your roza. It's just like to keep doing it, keep doing it. People put in their mouth and swallow it. But it's better that you shouldn't do that. But it won't break your roza anyway, even if you do like 50 times. For your age, it's alright. Yeah.
If you're a non-believer and you become Muslim in the month of Ramadan, do you have to make up for the fast that you missed?
No. But if you become Muslim in the midday, like during the fast, sooner you become Muslim, you have to start fasting. Yeah, so. But you just is like 10th of Ramadan and 9 days are gone. You won't need to do those 9 days. Obviously, what's the condition for? Yeah, so it wasn't farther on that person at that time. So like normally at the start of every chapter, they mention the conditions upon whom fasting is farther, or any action like wuzu. And we did in the chapter on wudu, for example. Do non-Muslims need to do wudu when they touch the Quran? No, because the condition of wudu is for Muslims because they need it for touching the Quran and reading namaz. And wudu is fard on Muslims. For a kafir, wudu is not fard. For a kafir, having iman is fard first. You know, like we have these people in the, I don't want to say any group names, but they're like, this should be a Sharia country and this Sharia law should be here. Those people are lost. Because instead of forcing Sharia law down someone's throat, you need to make the Muslims first. They don't even believe in God and you're saying, no, this Sharia law should be established and this Sharia law. That's not their fault. I mean, on a kafir, the first fard is having iman. After iman, okay, now the Sharia is applicable to that person. So, trying to change this country or having protests that we need Sharia law in the UK and so on, that's like, it's okay for Muslims, it makes your life easier, but that's not the way to call a kafir to Islam. Right? To say to him, read your namaz. You say to him, become a Muslim first. So calling them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's what's necessary. So generally for all the rulings of namaz, this, that, when you mention the conditions of who can do the action or who should do the action, one condition will always be there is a Muslim. Yeah, so namaz, who's your farzan? They say it's not farzan children, it has to be an adult. It's not farzan a kafir, it has to be a Muslim. Same with zakat, same with namaz, same with fasting, same with hajj, and so on. So iman is a condition that needs to be established first. And so those first fast won't be for one person. آمين اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. وصلى الله تعالى على حبيبه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.